All right. So again, just like kind of what I was, I'm going to change my screen around. So hold on one second. Okay. Uh, the topic I wanted to dive into because obviously a lot of you come have come to our programs for specific results, and many times it's going to be a fat loss goal and or a recomposition goal, which would line up with fat loss in its framing and or overall general health because um, when we step back and really identify percentages of body fat, that is a true one of the true health markers, and it's probably one of the tools that's not used well enough. I know we use a lot of BMI components, which is BMI is so old and ancient. Again, I think Aaron uses the framing of LeBron James would be a bad BMI. I'm a bad BMI, and I have been for a long time, just based upon my percentage of lean tissue and height. So I've been a bad marker for many years, and I think I'm sitting around 9% body fat right now. So understanding percentages of body fat is important because that pulls us out of a marker for disease. So with that said, why foundation matters more than perfect macros because we get feedback sometimes and like yeah, I have a few clients that like, oh, I miss my macros, and I'm like, it's all good. Did we hit these other markers or get close enough? you know, a lot of people you have in your mind that you want to be, perfect or have that, precision or consistently always hit the mark. Well, sometimes it's going to be off, and that's okay because I'm going to dive into that a little bit. So, fat loss requires these components, and this is some of the foundational components of our program. So, you have to be in some type of caloric deficit. It just is you can't drop any weight without being in a caloric deficit, whether it's fat or muscle. Um, what we coach is higher protein because that's going to allow you guys to uh, help get into more fat oxidation with the strength training, recovery, movement, things of that nature. Again, it's puzzle pieces put together, and I'll talk a little of the physiology. So when we really think about what is macro tracking, and there's macro coaches, and this has been around for a long time. It just got the kind of the marketing component laid on top of it. So it is going to be valuable because we want you to understand more about your consumption of food, because the more understanding you guys have, the more power and the better decisions you can make. So it's going to allow you to increase awareness, right? So what are you consuming? What does that look like? Is it, too many carbs, too many fats? Many times it's not too many proteins, but it's just awareness. And a lot of times for us to get from point A to point B, we need data and we need awareness of what we're currently doing, and then make adjustments to those patterns. So also we want to educate and understand portion control, obviously, because with portion control, we can control the amount of calories we're consuming from each meal and from total consumption. It also might identify hidden calories. Obviously, as we get more information, or the awareness going, oh, okay, maybe I was over consuming, because it's very easy to do. Obviously, it creates accountability for yourself, right? We have invested heavily in these tracking tools and this technology because from our standpoint as coaches, the more data we have, the better decision making in direction of coaching we can provide you. Because when you start peeling everything back, there's a physiology component, there is a math component, and when we combine those, we can get a specific result. Obviously there can be some other external factors that slow it down, speed it up, things of that nature. But typically we can navigate those situations. And if we can't navigate those situations, we what we will do is, sorry, my Screen got kicked off. What we can do is find other resources for you to make sure that you're moving in the correct direction. So, and again, the big picture of macro tracking or tracking in general is going to give you guys feedback and us feedback, the data points. But even with tracking, there's going to be a degree of error. There always is. Obviously, restaurant meals are there's the estimation, portion sizes vary, measuring cups may be inconsistent. All these are things that can uh, kind of throw off the true data that you're trying to consume. And that's why when we communicate to you guys, we're like, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect because many times for you to get perfect macros, you would have to do things that is very time consuming. And that's not necessarily the goal. What we're trying to do is give you tools and the knowledge base to make it easier and consistent. So even scale measurements have minor variations if you don't recalibrate things of that nature. So again, unless every gram is weighed, and even then, there may be some error, which chasing the perfect macro component can be exhausting, and we don't want that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here as we get into this presentation. What it does for us and you, it gives you direction, um, and it gives you clarity of what you're doing. It's personal responsibility, right? So we want to coach you through the process and enable you to make better decisions. That's a key to our program. It would be it wouldn't be right if we didn't educate you through the process to make sure that you keep these results for life once you hit them. So we're setting you up for success from that standpoint. So I don't know what this is doing. The real driver of fat loss. When we peel it back, we want to look at it from here. It's always going to occur. Energy out exceeds energy in. It's a math game. That's never going to necessarily change. Like I said, it may slow down in certain situations if the metabolic process or some of the systems are not functioning well, but it will still move if you are in some type of caloric restriction in comparison to, obviously, or expenditure in comparison to consumption. It just works that way. So if we don't get you into a a caloric deficit in some format, you're going to consistently be either break even and or store, and sometimes energy stored equals body fat. It can if we're not setting the environment up for success from that standpoint. So no macro ratio will override what I just went through. Energy expenditure. So energy out exceeds energy in. That's the foundational component. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about why we do some other things to help when you're in a caloric deficit, because I mean, that's some of the foundational components we teach. So and this is interesting because years ago, I did a lot of, if anybody's heard of Precision Nutrition, which is certification, and it's Dr. Berardi. I followed Dr. Berardi for multiple years. He's great, great nutrition. He designed the Precision Nutrition courses and stuff, and I went through most of it. And it was interesting. He would always, pull different researches and very science driven. So when I go through some of these statements, there's data points to reinforce it as well. You can eat high carb, low carb, high fat, balanced macros, and if you're not in a calorie deficit, fat loss will not occur. If you can eat high carb, be in a calorie deficit, and lose weight. So there was research on this, but again, I'm going to explain from a physiology standpoint and some of the things and the reasoning why we're going to coach you, with a higher protein component because it makes it easier for you to lose fat and it sets your body up for fat oxidation from a physiological standpoint. Just sets a better environment, an easier way to do it in comparison to hey, I'm going to eat, higher carbs, but stay under my calories and be in a deficit and still move the needle. It'll move it, but it will be very slow, and you may not set yourself up for fat oxidation. Uh, but there's research out there that shows that you can be on different macro ranges, percentages. So whether it's carb, fat, protein, and be in a calorie deficit and still move the needle. Uh, so that's all based upon physiology. That's why again, you've heard me beat this drum, and you see this all over marketing now. It's kind of funny, but a lot of times the marketplace is slow to catch up with the science, and or the science they teach in school is slow in comparison to some of the application. Uh, it just is what it is. So, um, why protein is non-negotiable? Protein is the anchor during fat loss. It's going to set you up for a better environment. So it preserves the lean muscle mass. So the amino acids increases your ability to feel satisfied for extended period of time, which is a big one. Insulin responsive, which I don't have in here. So it reduces cravings. Thermal effect of food. So when you're consuming protein, it takes a lot more calories to burn the protein in comparison to other foods, which is a good thing. So it's working with you. Obviously, the recovery component is the amino acids and the nutrients, the creatine as well. So you get creatine from animal sources. So obviously you see the creatine as a supplement as well, and it's going to help you maintain metabolic rate more effectively. So again, we're trying to set up an environment for you to be successful in this journey and make it easier for you to accomplish. Ranges, again, this is big as far as consumption, 1 to 2 grams per body weight. You guys may be under that marker point, which is fine. What we typically do is set ranges just about on grams for female. When I say pound of body weight, I get a little bit more specific with some of the guys that I train. So I might push them even up to 2 grams. That's kind of where I set with my protein intake is kind of 2 grams per body weight if I can hit it, and I'm close most days. So, and again, or based on lean mass for advanced individuals, and that's where I would say, if we have a good picture of lean tissue, and we had a really specific goal in mind of getting to a certain percentage, and this is where it gets a lot more crucial to have better data when you get leaner. It's always as you get leaner, you're going to have better data points. So if calories are low and protein is low, muscle loss risk will increase for everyone, no matter who you are. So fat loss should not mean muscle loss. We don't want that. We don't want to impact your metabolic process. And that's a big thing with what we've seen with individuals on GLP-1s. So many of them were, once they went on that peptide, they weren't prepared for the decrease in hunger response. And what they did is they started under consuming pretty heavily, and their activity level was probably pretty similar. And they weren't maybe not resistance training and or setting certain protein goals up. When you combine those components, what happens is you're going to be under calorie probably pretty heavily. And if you're under proteined as well, your body will utilize fat as a fuel source. It'll utilize all the carb, uh, muscle glycogen, and it will start tapping into protein. Protein will be broken down and converted into a fuel source, a carbohydrate fuel source. So what happens with individuals that we were seeing, and I way back a couple of years ago when we were still at the brick and mortar, I had a gentleman who was on a GLP-1. He started one without telling me, which it's fine, right? But from a coaching standpoint, I knew something was up really quick because we were doing every 6 weeks, we were doing a percentage of body fat. And I'm getting off a tangent, so I'll finish my story and I'll get back to it. So his wife came up to me and told me, which I already kind of assumed he went down that direction. This is in the earlier phases when I was still trying to do a lot of research, and this is about 3 years ago, when I was still trying to do more research on the first couple versions of these GLP-1s, because some of the first versions were not as effective as the ones they have now, and they were causing more, I think, disruption within the digestion process. So, from a professional in the industry, Aaron and I had to really understand what was coming down the pipeline and educate ourselves in the process. But anyway, we kept doing the assessments, and he lost weight. He lost 10, like 7 or 10 pounds within the assessment cycle, which was great. And he had the weight to lose. And guys again can drop it faster than females. Just from a metabolic standpoint, we're more efficient, we carry more muscle, so we're going to burn more calories. And then obviously the testosterone component helps. And I was like, hey, that's great. We lost 7 pounds. You lost 6 pounds of muscle, 1 pound of fat. And was that 100% accurate? No, there is a degree of error in most testing devices. We have an in-body scan, which is like a $7,000 piece of equipment, and it still has up to 3% error if some of the data points. So, I've tested enough on that device that, was it all 6 pounds of muscle he lost? No, there's probably water weight and some other components in there. But I said, hey, obviously you're on a GLP-1. You're not eating, you're not consuming enough of protein, which I had preached to him in the beginning of our when he started my program. I was like, hey, you gotta get your protein up to 100 grams. He tracked, and he would hit like 50, 70. So it's not a male or female thing for individuals to be under protein. It's just it's really a habit component in where you get your protein sources from. So, I said, hey, we got to get your protein. And for him, I was like 120. And that's pretty low for most guys. But we had to get it up above that marker point because he would have came back in, and he did. So we fought through another cycle of assessment. He dropped another 5 pounds, and 4 pounds was lean tissue again. Not necessarily good. And I said, I stopped him and I was like, hey, if we keep going down this track, what you're going to do is you're going to rebound, because we're dumping way too much lean tissue. He was new to lifting too, and he was in his late 50s or early 60s, excuse me, never really lifted. So his foundational component of lean muscle mass was not good in the first place. And on that third assessment, he finally hit his 120 gram marker point for that whole time. And his third assessment, I think he lost another 4 pounds and 1 pound of lean tissue. So 4 pounds of fat. So you can start flipping it. And that's what we've seen from setting an environment up, and that was an example of a GLP-1 and what can happen. That could happen across the board if you're undercaloried and then you're under protein as well. So again, kind of a long story, but it just gives you some understanding of what can happen if we're missing some of the marker points. Oop, slide messed up. Sorry about that. That's what kept pulling up over on that side. So when we jump into this and understand it, well, how come we don't need perfect macro precision? We don't have to have perfection when we're tracking macros. So if you're tracking on a day-to-day basis, which most of you should be, I hope so, because that's again data points so we can better coach you. And you see, hey, my fat's too high, or my it's not perfect. We just need you close enough. If you're gonna, get close enough, we're good enough until we can start getting you in a certain range of percentage of body fat. The lower we can get you in percentage of body fat, that's when it becomes a little bit more important. So if we can stay within your protein grams, within 10 to 15 grams, we're high fiving. That's great. Um, you stay within your calorie targets of where you need to be as far as in that deficit. So if we're getting close enough, obviously we want consistency from the other marker points within our program. The resistance training, again, that's one of the foundational components. If you haven't started it, that's that is one of the foundations. Movement, making sure we're burning enough calories. Because again, some of our day-to-day activities, we're not moving enough to get us in enough caloric or enough caloric expenditure. Because the reason we don't want to dump you guys in a heavier caloric restriction, you can't tolerate it for an extended period of time. If somebody's in a caloric restriction much more than 5 to 7 days, and it's much more than 250 to 300 calories, and they will start noticing a little difference. Um, and many times, what will happen is they will overconsume at some point, or because you get in more of a response of starvation, and it's just very hard to tolerate. I've done some different styles of cuts and things of that nature, more for a specific look in the bodybuilding thing. I never did bodybuilding, but I've done some things to manipulate certain percentage of body fat, and it for men we can tolerate it a little bit better. For women, it really puts a lot of stress in the hormonal response. So again, fat loss is over time. It's consistency. So, and it's going to be driven by trends, not the daily perfection. We got to get close enough. And the interesting part is your body is going to be very, and it likes homeostasis. So getting consistent with what you're doing, even through the weekends, is important. So it's a signal because we really help stabilize your insulin response when you're eating consistent. You have those meals, and there's certain amount of protein you're consuming. So that is just going to help the big picture and accelerate the process. So this is when it comes counterproductive, and we've seen this. And I've had conversations about this over the years. So you feel anxious over small deviation. Again, it's data points. It's feedback. It's not a make or break. At the end of the day, if you're off, what does that mean? So now, obviously, if you're extremely over, yes, that again, it's data. That's not going to be moving the needle in the right direction. So we don't want you to avoid social situations because of this. Uh, you know, you label food as good or bad. I know that was a big thing that Berardi always talked about. Now, would I say, hey, some foods are less healthy than others? 100%. But it's when we start, labeling them and saying, oh, I can't have this, and restricting. But you want to make proper decisions based upon your health goals, and then obviously your fitness goals as well. So you also tie self-worth to hitting those macro numbers. Come on, we can let that go. But I know, I mean, there's certain personality types, and I have, one of my clients is like that, and I really had to talk with him through that process, and educate him, and kind of reframe his thoughts. Really tracking and even macro tracking should help you create empowerment, because again, this is a tool to help give you the knowledge and us data points to get a specific result, right? So not obsession, right? Purpose of tracking is data collection. It's data. Data helps you make better nutritional decisions. It helps us give you feedback on where you're going based upon your specific goals. It, keeps you inside the guardrails and makes sure we're moving in the right direction. So again, it's feedback, not judgment. So always frame it that way. You know, the only way uh, that somebody can get perfect macros is they're going to have to measure everything out, which I think's is pretty cumbersome. I've done it here or there, not to that extreme, but I had to do that just to get some of my data points. Once I had them, I understood what I needed to do to get my certain macros in certain ranges. Again, tracking is education. When done correctly, it's going to teach you, how much protein is actually in your meals, because that's important. We want to make sure you're hitting those markers. When calories are coming, where calories are coming from. Because again, when you first start, and we hear this a lot, is like, oh, I didn't realize maybe I was over consuming. That's exactly what tracking is going to do to help you. We track, from a business standpoint, if we're not tracking our finances, we're not tracking our marketing dollars, we're not tracking things, we wouldn't know. And we do it in so many other areas. That's why when people say, "Well, I don't track," or I eat healthy, what does that mean if we don't have the data? So where's the calories coming from? Obviously how quick fats add up. Where are your carbohydrates? How they impact your performance? Where does hidden calories exist? This is all information that you can pull from tracking. Obviously, over time, of doing this and us help educating you, it's going to build a literacy of nutrition and making better decisions based upon your individual goals and or once you hit your goal, you will able to, you should have the tools to maintain that goal based upon what we're teaching you, the concepts we're teaching you. So the goal is not lifelong tracking. The goal is better decision making. It's who are you becoming, right? So you're going to hear us talk about that a lot because that's a lot of NLP training that Aaron and I have been through. Because the actions are going to represent that new version of you. So the new version you makes better nutritional decisions because you've already pulled in the data points. So this may help you a little bit as far as like when you have to get, and not always, like we've gotten really, really awesome results without um, going extreme with macro counting. And again, we want to empower you to make this a lifelong component. So when does manipulation become very, very important? I said more important. So early in the phases, yes, because we have to see where you're at. And a lot of times what we say is don't worry about carbohydrate, don't worry about fat right now. I want to see where your protein's at and your total and are you in a calorie deficit? So what we try to do there is say, hey, we're gonna pull these other two components out and make this as simple as possible. Because we know if we're here and here, the needle's gonna start moving, right? So are you getting leaner? Is things changing? Is metabolic adaptation increasing? So with proper progressive overload and resistance training, your metabolic process should get better. Now, as we lose weight, even fat, that will start decreasing our metabolic efficiency, our metabolic process. But if we're able to put on a little bit of lean tissue and or maintain the lean tissue we have, what will happen is your metabolic process will stabilize and maybe even increase depending on how much lean tissue you put on. And that's where when I talked about the percentage of body fat, that's another a good indicator or cue for a lot of people to have because again, it's a data point. And then when we look at the non-exercise activity thermogenesis decreases. Um, so if you're not moving enough outside of, your exercise, so what I'm saying is just like your step component. And a lot of times, what will happen is as we lose weight, again, even fat, we want to keep the resistance training to stabilize the lean tissue because our thermal component, our metabolic process, again, adjust. And this is why this will explain why you see a bounce back in some of the GLP-1 individuals who do not get into resistance training well enough. Their metabolic process has been changed so much because they've lost lean tissue. When they drop to a specific weight and get off the peptide, their hunger responses increase, right? And their metabolic process has been decreased significantly because A, they've lost fat. Okay, the more weight you carry, the more energy you expend when you move around because it's weight, right? It's not efficient, but it burns calories. Now, when individuals lose fat, lean tissue, on top of that, their metabolic process went from here to here. And when some of those hunger responses kick back in, they overconsume and or they go back to what they used to consume. And now their metabolic process is way lower and they should be consuming way under that. They don't know that because they just, A, obviously they weren't educated during the process and B, they didn't have the proper guidance, which is unfortunate. So sometimes hunger signals increase. If they do, we may need to manipulate your macros slightly. If your recovery declines, we can manipulate some of your protein and carbohydrate components to help with that. If hormonal environment shifts, that would be on blood work things because sometimes, obviously, uh, with restriction of carbohydrates can put a little bit more stress on your thyroid. So manipulating carbohydrates up and down, that again, those are a little bit higher level nutritional coaching things. Carb cycling is what it's called. Um, I've used it myself. I've used it on clients, but that's if you get to a certain point and we start seeing stagnation and our percentage of body fat is starting to get lower. That's where strategic adjustments matter the most. When things start to be disrupted or we get to a lower percentage of body fat, that things start slowing down, which it does. Anytime you get to a lower percentage of body fat, the needle moves slower and slower. So your your manipulation and things that your data points you need or adjustments you need to make become fine-tuned. And this is where the strategic, carbohydrate adjustments can come in. Lower level body fat carbohydrate manipulation can help support training performance on days. I'm just going to give you an example. And most of you may have heard some of these components. I don't think anybody's doing this. I have one client on my side. And I'll just give you, some marker points. We're trying to get him uh, probably down right around that 10% or 9% body fat. And we may have to go into some carb cycling just based upon the volume of workouts he's doing, and he's training for a specific competition, which is a weightlifting type competition. So it becomes a little bit more challenging for me to get him a certain percentage of body fat based upon his activity level. So it becomes a little really precise. But um, it's going to carbohydrate manipulation is going to help support training performance, maintain muscle fullness, so your workouts are better, um, and then um, improve adherence. So if you manipulate some of your carbohydrates, you feel like you're satisfied. So you don't doesn't feel like you're putting more stress on the body. Uh, Leptin levels as well. So it may include, and this is where carb cycling is higher carbs on training days, slightly lower carbs on rest days, structured refeed days, small carb reduction when progress stalls. Again, it's just another tool in the toolbox. But we have to get the foundational components that I just went through first, and then hey, we have some other tools that we can always pull out and help once we get to a specific range. Here's some common mistakes I see individuals make when they feel like things have stalled, but did it really stall? Sometimes what will happen and what I'll see from a physiology standpoint is we will see a drop in a week, level out, a drop in a week. So it seems like it takes 2 weeks for that needle to move. But what happens is maybe you lost, 2 pounds or 3 pounds, would be fantastic. High fives. Maybe it's a pound and a half. It depends on each individual. In that first week, everything's good, right? Or maybe you hit 2 weeks in a row where you dropped, and then all of a sudden you feel like you stalled. Your body is will have to stabilize in some format, and it does that naturally. But as long as you keep all those marker points in your head in the game, it'll keep moving. It'll stall, it'll slow down, and it'll drop again. It'll slow down, and it'll drop again. It does that from a natural response and a survival response because what is happening is your metabolic process is starting to adjust, and as long as we can keep your protein high, we're slightly under calories, and you satisfied, right? So making sure that we're taking in enough carbs and your rest and recovery is good, it will continue to move in the right direction. So what what individuals try to do is they start trying to change everything um, too soon, I think, because the foundational components are not strong enough yet. So what they'll want to do is they'll go in and slash carbs too early. And if you do that, again, you can tolerate it for extended period of time. For females, slashing carbs for extended period of time can cause some other hormonal stress. Guys can tolerate it a little bit better, but cutting calories too aggressively is another one. Again, that's another stressor. We'll have a bounce back. There's no physiological way if a person's under calories, they're not losing weight. Just not. You look at Survivor, those people out there and they underfeed them, they all lose weight. Um, Again, can things slow things down a little bit? Yes. Can it make it more disruptive? Yes. But typically, you know, It's a math game. And then I see this happen as well. Again, with the gentleman I'm coaching, he had to increase his cardio activity for his competition, which I told him, I said, hey, it's going to be harder for us to get from point A to point B on a percentage wise, because anytime you push up your cardio activity, it's going to push the hunger response. And typically, a lot of times, you're going to crave carbs because we're burning not only carbohydrate for muscle contraction, but you're also burning it for the cardiovascular activity. So it just makes the equation a little bit more challenging. And what can you tolerate? So what I've seen people go after cardio to drop body fat. Mm. I think it's a lot easier to dial in your nutrition, your protein, get your resistance training legit dialed in, movement, create an environment that's easier for you to lose fat instead of more difficult. Now, what I can say is if you're at a lower percentage of body fat in a really and what I need to do is I can share over percentage of body fat ranges and or visual cues. I think that go a long way with some of you guys, and just from an educational standpoint, if a woman is in a great, not a great, a good range percentage of body fat, they have a little bit more metabolic flexibility to do cardiovascular in the hunger response. If you're in that fat loss journey, it can disrupt a lot of things if you're not. So once you hit a certain marker point, yeah, it's okay to maybe put in some other cardio activity that puts a stressor on the body. But I would not prescribe that unless we're at our ideal marker point that we want to be at. So low fats and carbs simultaneously, yeah, you probably don't want to do that. Um, Again, it's going to put a lot of stress in the body because if you're going to pull your carbs a little bit, you want to probably push up your fats. It's going to help with you feeling satisfied. Otherwise, the hunger response is going to kick way up. And then they try to be perfect instead of consistent. Consistency is always going to move the needle forward as long as we're within the range we need to be. And again, we see this a lot. The more aggressive, the more extreme, it's typically going to be doing more damage long term and or burnout. That's not sustainable. So what we're trying to teach you is giving you a skill set that you can take with you for the rest of your life. And obviously, once you hit that marker point you desire. So here's kind of a hierarchy and it's just really simple, but from a physiological standpoint, physiology standpoint, it makes sense. Obviously, level one, we got to get you in some type of calorie deficit, right? Level two, we want to have the protein at a certain marker point or close enough. Now we add in strength training. Sometimes we've coached individuals, we kept them out of strength training for, 3 to 4 weeks and just focused on movement, got them in a calorie deficit, got them eating enough protein, got them moving, got the needle moving because it's easier to control those components before adding another stressor in. The stressor is strength training. It stresses the body, so it can affect your hunger responses. So level four, sleep, stress management. Where's that at for you? That's why it's so crucial if you guys can and do track your sleep. Interesting part is the software is pulling more of the data, more of that data in if you have the tracking device. So it can pull, the Aura, the Whoop. It pulls those other devices as well. I just don't know accuracy on some of them, but having those data points, it is going to be crucial. If you start hitting a wall and or feel like you're not recovering, then we need to look at that marker point. Hey, what's your stress uh, marker point? Because with the Whoop and the Aura Ring, they look at your HRV, which is HRV is a stress response. How much is your sleep? Where's your heart rate variability? And that's an indicator of how much stress is on the body. And it puts it in a ratio. It's kind of cool if you guys played around with it. It puts it in a ratio where, hey, your HRV is good, and you can go out and do harder activity. Hey, your HRV is not great. Just watch it. So it's a stress monitoring system. And then level five, I would say macro timing, carb cycling, and that depends on what your percentage of body fat is and what your ultimate goal was. And then we would go into advanced manipulation. That's getting a certain look. We can manipulate your macros and manipulate your calorie intake to get a specific look for each individual. Obviously, what we see is most people go right to macros. And that's where you see, we've had a lot of conversation with individuals who've come from like macro coaching, things of that nature, which is fine. It's as long as you took that information and used it as a tool. But a lot of times, what I'd seen is they just have a generic format for you to, hey, you need to be in these macros. I mean, that really depends. Obviously, they're trying to take data points and kind of put somebody in a box. But long term, what I would rather do is see you guys just educate you through the process from the physiology standpoint, and then track the data, understand the data, process the data, and then give you the ability to make better decisions on your own. That's ultimately the learning process. So obviously, this is just going to be again kind of redundant, but we have to have some type of moderate calorie deficit, which we set up for you guys when you come into the program. We set the protein goal, allocate carbs, fats based upon preference, performance. Sometimes we don't even mess with that until we get you to a certain marker point. Or if the needle keeps moving, I say, hey, I'm not touching that. There's no reason. Why bring another variable in for you guys to have to manipulate if the needle continues to move? You don't have to. Obviously, we want to track the trends. The weigh-ins are so crucial. Obviously, if you have the ability to percentage of body fat in on a regular basis, that's good as well. Pictures go a long way. Measurements can be as well. Uh, but what I'll do is I'll share over some of the documents of percentage of body fat ranges and then pictures of what certain percentages look like. To a certain degree, there's a little bit of a degree of error in there. Again, adjustments. We may adjust after 2 weeks. We may adjust after a month. We may adjust after 4 months. Again, there's no reason to disrupt a pattern that is working as long as it's not extreme. So it's always going to be the long game mindset, right? It's not about perfection. It's about consistency, structure, feedback, patience. We have to have a little patience. And then intelligent adjustments. As long as we're getting the data points and we have as much data as we can get from you from a coaching standpoint, we can get you the results you want. So it's a compass. It's not a prison. So tracking is, look at it from that standpoint. Use data to build knowledge. Okay. Use knowledge to build confidence. And that's what we want from you guys. So some key takeaways. You don't need perfect macros to lose fat. Nope. We just have to be close enough. You do need a calorie deficit. You do need higher protein intake. Tracking is feedback, not a judgment. Manipulation becomes more relevant as you get leaner. Uh, again, we don't want to obsess. We want consistency. It doesn't have to be perfect. Master the fundamentals. Refine when appropriate. It's a simple principle. I know, I know. It requires discipline and practice, though, because all the external factors come into play. We can't put you in a bubble. You have life to deal with, stress responses to deal with, how you deal with stress, environmental components. Those are all the hard parts, right? But it does not require perfection. So, with that said, I know I went a little bit longer than I typically do. I got on some rants, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the share to see if you guys have any other questions. Hopefully that gives you some clarity and understanding from a tracking component and a physiological component that here's why we do some of the things we do. Here's why we would change some things. Here's why we wouldn't change some things. So that gives you guys clarity. Any questions for me? Let's see here.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
So if you have a bad day, you go out, I shouldn't say bad day, off day,
Yeah.
you go out to dinner, maybe you ate too much or, had a few glasses of wine more than you should. Is doing eating less the next day, is that helpful, or do you just go back to what you should?
I mean, this is awesome because I actually have a client that deals with overconsumption. It's a binging component. Um, and here's how I frame it. I mean, don't make anything extreme. Doesn't have to be extreme. Yes, sometimes we are going to have days where we go over. Conceptually, yeah, if you think of it, oh, it ruined everything. That's what a lot where a lot of individuals go, and then they the next day they do it again. We don't want that. We want you to
Right.
go into the next day and try to keep everything as normal as possible. Don't make it extreme.
Okay. No, I
Now,
just like Saturday was a little off. I was probably 400 calories over, so I did, a few hundred calories less on Sunday. I mean, is it?
I would say if you can tolerate it, but don't make it too extreme, right?
No, no, it
Yeah.
wasn't even intentional, actually. It just happened that way. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm not hungry, so I don't need to eat anymore.
Yeah, and sometimes, so say if you had a lighter Sunday, so you did less activity, you can probably get away with less consumption on days you have less activity and be okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Thank you.
it's a push and a pull, right? But yeah, you did it right. I mean, you can. I always advise, hey, yes, you can be undercalorie the next day, but don't feel like you have to go to the extreme.
Yeah.
Because ideally we want a consistent pattern that we stack on 2 weeks, 4 weeks, because that's when we're able to stack consistency from 7 to 14 days, the needle's really going to move in the right direction, and your momentum is going to it's a motivational component as well.
So I guess that brings another question then that I haven't talked to Aaron about. How does alcohol play into
Hmm?
this? I mean, if we're making this balance and a lifetime change.
I so I will say this: it's going to slow everything down.
Okay.
So I would say is if you can moderate it and minimize it as much as possible, it makes the fat loss journey faster
Right,
because
right.
because it does clog up the system when you do consume, um, and it slows or kind of halts the fat loss component. It's a poison, and your body has to detox that component. So it kind of sludges up the system a little bit. So with that, is if you do consume, I would try to stay hydrated, minimize it if you can, because it just makes everything faster.
Yep. Okay. I just don't want to, I mean, I don't want to like cut everything out and
No,
go to the extreme because I'm not going to be able to
no,
sustain this.
there's a happy balance. But what I would say is, if look at it from a calorie standpoint, and if you wanted to have a glass of wine or whatever, um, make sure it doesn't push you over calories.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
and then obviously stay hydrated as much as possible. Those are, I mean,
Okay.
two things you can do.
Thank you.
Yep. Awesome. Anyone else?
Yeah,
I
I
have a
have a
question.
question.
Sure.
Should we also be tracking our fiber intake if we're talking about like on the macro level?
It's just for fat loss.
Just in general, I guess for fat loss, for like overall nutrition, I didn't know if that was imperative, if we need to hit like a certain amount. I mean, I've been told like you had to hit between 25 and then I had a doctor tell me, no, it needs to be 35. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
35 grams of
I mean,
fiber. What am I
yeah,
supposed
yeah,
to
yeah.
do with that? Yeah.
So big picture on that is that's a big picture health component. That's kind of a blanket statement. Yes, I would say if you can eat more whole foods, your fiber is naturally going to be where it needs to be. Um, I know they fortify a lot of things. I wouldn't put that as a high marker point. Um, it just depends on, is there other health risk factors out there for you? That's, sometimes doctors say, well, you need to hit X amount of fiber. But if your percentage of body fat's really high, I'm like, I need to get your percent of body fat lower. Let's focus on the fiber once we get there. So if you consume a little bit higher quality foods that are in their natural state, your fiber is going to shoot up. Can you take fiber supplementation? Yes. I mean, that's an individual component. But at a big picture level, I would rather have you hit certain marker points first, and then we can worry about fiber later. Now,
Okay,
if you,
thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
yeah, and then it goes back to, okay, is there digestion issues going on? Because a lot of times that's around digestion. Well, are we addressing some of the gut biome? Are we, I know Aaron's been talking to you guys about the kombucha and things of that nature. There's ways to help put a better environment for your digestion. What fiber does, I'm going to go off on tangent, sorry. What fiber does is it helps your natural gut biome. It feeds your natural gut biome. That's why some of the doctors say, hey, increase your fiber. Well, fiber does help with your good gut biome as well.
Okay, thank you.
Hmm. Awesome. Any other questions?
I have one.
Sure.
So my scale monitors my lean body mass and my fat percentage,
Hmm.
and I know it's not going to be really accurate, but I do see changes from day to day that seem pretty significant to me. I mean, a couple of pounds of lean body weight or a percentage of lean body mass
Yeah. So
or body fat.
yeah, what is this? What's the scale?
Withings?
Okay. Um, I would say from a day-to-day basis, there's a lot of factors that can go into play. Um, specifically for females, obviously your cycles and things, your hormonal component. You got a lot more variables than men. Specifically when you're stepping on a scale in water weight, and how that fluctuates. So, for you, I would really try to get a routine where you maybe weigh the same day, the same time with the same environment as much as possible, and use that as a data point for you. I have
Yeah,
a
I typically do.
yeah,
Um, first thing in the morning after using the restroom
yeah,
and um, without clothing weight. So,
yeah, yeah, because they're like I said, even our whatever $7,000 scale we have upstairs, we still have it. We kept it from our gym. Um, there's a 3% degree of error. I've personally have stepped on it one day and got on it the next day and tried to keep all the variables across the board. And I lost 2 pounds of muscle, which is not true. Again, use it, as a tool, but it's not going to be
mhm.
perfect. So don't like get caught up in it. If it says, hey, you lost 2 pounds of muscle within a week, hopefully it has some
Oh yeah, no,
degree of
I was
error.
just curious about it.
Yeah. That's always the hardest part. We want you guys to have those tools, but the technology is okay, but there's a degree of error that kind of throws it off a little bit.
Hmm.
But again, use it, obviously, because as 10 pounds down, 12 pounds, keep using it from that standpoint. You had that initial data point, and yeah, it should trend in the correct direction.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah. Well, awesome. If there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap her up, and I will go get those percentages of body fat, and then I'll look for those pictures I used to have that would give you guys reference points, which is interesting. I think from a visual standpoint, it gives you a little bit of clarity. Not always 100% perfect because people's body structures are different, but it gives you some understanding of certain percentages. So I'll share that with you guys. Well, awesome. I'll go ahead and wrap it up. Appreciate it. Again, if you have other questions, I will be sending, I know I said this last week, a a survey out for you guys as well, to get more information of what you guys uh, would like to go or talk about or address from a nutritional standpoint. So, all right. Well, you guys have a great day.
Right.
Thank you. You too.
Mhm.
Thank
We'll
you
see
so
you.
much.